Hello, I'm doing this off my phone today, so I think it's working. Oh, it is recording, good. Hello, welcome to day 7 of the 21-day Ashtanga Yoga Challenge. You might notice that I'm not in my yoga flows today because day 7 is a day of rest. Well done. For anyone that's actually done this full 6 days, amazing. If you've done a couple of days, amazing too. And the reason I'm doing a little video, I felt a little bit apprehensive about it, but the reason I'm doing it is because I wanted to talk about yoga off of the mat. I think nowadays we all have this idea that yoga is just the physical practice, which is a really important element to it, but there's lots of other stuff around yoga, and yoga is not just the physical movement. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And so let's start with what Ashtanga, the word, actually means. Ashtanga is a Sanskrit word, and Sanskrit is an Indian language, and Ash means the number 8 and Anga means limb. And so Ashtanga means the 8 limbs, and it's referring to the 8 limbs of yoga, which is a philosophy or a principle that was written by an old Indian sage called Patanjali, and it's within the Yoga Sutras, which is the philosophy of all yoga. And actually, I've got the book here, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And in this book, it has got 196 sutras, and they're tiny little sentences in Sanskrit, which have much larger topics. And within chapter 2 of the book, it talks about the 8 limbs. And the 8 limbs aren't the 8 limbs of the physical body. They are 8 steps that ask us to work through, which may lead us to samadhi, which is higher consciousness, liberation, or how I like to think about it, a calmer mind and a better sense of well-being. So the word yoga itself, in the earliest text that they can find the meaning of yoga, it goes back to the word yoke, which is the wooden bit that goes around a cattle's neck, which attaches the cattle to a cart. And that's where the whole principle of yoke, which turned into yoga, which comes into connection or union. And that's the earliest reference that they can find in ancient texts. So yoga means to yoke, to bind, to bring things together, and more in a more modern sense, yoga is to unite the mind with the breath and the breath with the body. So that's where that all comes from. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, it's important to say, I think, that in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the second sutra says, what is yoga? And it says yoga chitta vritti nirodha, which is Sanskrit, and yoga means yoga, and chitta means the mind, vritti means fluctuations or modifications, and nirodha means restraint. So if we actually break it down, it says yoga is restraining the fluctuations or modifications of the mind. How good is that? Through yoga, we can calm our thoughts and our mind, which is really lovely. And then in the next chapter, it talks about the 8 limbs, Ashtanga Yoga. And those 8 limbs are basically telling us how to do that, which is amazing. So the 8 limbs of yoga, as I said, they don't refer to physical parts or limbs. They're like these 8 steps, these 8 building blocks that we build on top of each other. And the analogy it uses is if you think of the rungs of a ladder, the 8 limbs are each rung of the ladder that we can step our feet onto to get to the top. And those 8 limbs are Yamas, the niyamas, the asana, pranayama, pratyahara, dhyana, dharana, and samadhi. So what does that even mean? I'll try and be as quick as I can and simplify this as much as possible. So the yamas are social ethics. So it's saying if we behave or interact in society, then we might feel less distracted in our mind. And there are 5 things in the yamas that it says that if we behave in these ways, we will feel calmer in our mind. And the first one of those is ahimsa, which is non-violence. So it's talking about the obvious: don't be violent, don't go and punch someone if you're upset with them. But it's also referring to 3 stages in our, through physically to ourselves, so how we move, how we think, so the words that we say to ourselves, oh, you stupid girl, you forgot your keys, or whatever, the language that we use in our brain, and the things that we say, so non-violence. The second one is satya, truthfulness. It's saying be truthful in a way that's not harmful to others. Be truthful towards yourself and be truthful to others in a language that is not harmful. Asteya means non-stealing, and it obviously means don't nick things, but it also is referring to being aware of other people's time, not stealing too much time from people. And then the fourth one is brahmacharya, which literally translates as walking with God. And that's a bit of a controversial one for me, because obviously I'm not sure about God. So I actually questioned my philosophy teacher in India about this, and the way he described it to me, I really like. And he said, brahmacharya can mean, imagine that you're walking alongside of somebody that you really respect and care for, and think about the way that you would behave in front of that person. So for me, I think about like an old grandparent, and I think about the way that I would behave in front of them. So brahmacharya is to be walking alongside someone that you respect, and how would you act in front of them, and try and maintain that politeness through your life and in social situations. And then the final one, the 5th one of the yamas, is abhyangraha, which is non-receival. So don't take what you don't need. So we've got those 5 things. It says social ethics: if we behave with non-violence, truthfulness, non-stealing, behaving in a way that we would deem as being polite in front of someone that we care about, and not taking what we don't need from others, then our mind will be better. The second one, niyamas, these are like personal instructions to follow, and again there are 5 points within them. Saucha, cleanliness, but again that's physically, so asking us to be clean, but also it's referring to being clean in our speech, in our thoughts. Santosha, contentment, to be content, to release the sense of grasping for things, for the need for external things, external gratifications. Third one is tapas, which means austerity, to have a simple life. The 4th personal instruction is asking us to study, to keep the mind strong, swadvahaya. And the 5th is ishwa pranadan. Believe me, it's difficult to say, and it says surrender to God. That means surrender to God. And again, that was one I questioned, and my personal interpretation of that one is to have faith in yourself, not necessarily faith in a God, but let's put it into a physical asana or an example. So let's talk about handstands. You might try and do a handstand one day, or whatever position it is, and just go, this is not going to happen. Like, who are we kidding? But I believe that one day I am going to be able to do this, to have faith in yourself for something. So that could maybe be interpreted as that. So we've got the yamas, the first one, the 5 ideas that if we behave in a positive way in social dynamics, then it will allow our thoughts and our mind to be a little bit less fluctuating. And then the niyamas are personal instructions to remain clean in our thoughts, to be content, to live with austerity, to study, and to have faith. And those are the 2. So if we can work on those things, then our mind might be able to be less distracted. And then the third one is our asana, which is obviously the physical movement. So in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, he doesn't reference all these different yoga poses. He just says, in reference to asana, that the pose or posture should be stable and comfortable in your body, and that you should be able to hold the position for an extended amount of time. And he doesn't really say anything more about the physical practice itself. The physical practice or the positions or sequences that we do in Ashtanga come much later from Pattabhi Jois. He put the sequence together. And all of those yoga positions come from Hatha Yoga. So yamas, how we behave, how we think about ourselves and others, and a physical practice are going to set us in good stead to reaching higher consciousness, liberation. It's obviously going to create heat in the body when we physically practice and make our body more supple and healthy into later life. And then the 4th one, or the 4th limb, is pranayama, which is breath work and breathing with awareness, our life force. In Ashtanga we do Ujjayi breathing, but there are lots of different breathing techniques to do, which, as we know, can have huge benefits on the nervous system and therefore on our mind and our well-being. And so those are the first 4 limbs: how we interact, what we think about ourselves, doing a physical practice and working on our breathing. And once we master those 4 things and we practice them for a long period of time with some level of consistency and dedication, it then says that we move on to the 5th limb of yoga, which is pratyahara, which means withdrawal of the senses. Once we can do these things, we can begin to withdraw our senses. So what we see, what we hear, what we smell. And let me just check my notes for this one. It's saying, I've written that we should be able to reach the asanas effortlessly. Yeah, and I'm just reading, sorry. Bear with me. Where is pratyahara? To detach from the senses. There we go. I was looking at the wrong page. I do apologise. This is a link between the first 4 limbs and the last 3 limbs of the 8 limbs of yoga. The first 4 are only covering the physical practice of the body, and one has to pass through this towards pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses, to start coming into those spiritual aspects of philosophies of yoga. And prat, means the link or the bridge, and yahara, to withdraw or to pull back. That's what it actually means. So to be detached from the sense organs, from the outer perception, and to withdraw the mind from material world and outside senses. Not to be affected by things that happen around you on an emotional level or on a physical level. Yeah, lovely. It's really nice actually going through all this. So they're the first 5. Yamas, niyamas, asanas, pranayama and pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. And once we do all those things, we can move into dharana, which is the 6th limb, which is concentration. And the lovely analogy it uses in the Yoga Sutras is, imagine that there is water being poured from a jug from high up, and you'll notice that the water splashes, and that's meant to represent the untrained mind. It splashes, it's all over the place, it's an unbroken stream. And then think about a lovely warm hot oil that you pour from up high. It's this one line of consistent flow, and that is the analogy it uses for a concentrated mind, or not a concentrated mind, a mind that is concentrated to fix or focus on one specific object or space. So we've removed all these external distractions, the way we think negatively about ourselves, the way we think negatively about others, the words and the language that we use and how we interact, you know, that all of that is nice and even now. So we can withdraw from the distractions and concentrate. It's lovely, isn't it? And once we are able to concentrate for a period of time and it extends, we can then move into the 7th limb, which is dharana. And dharana is the word in Sanskrit for meditation, contemplation or meditation. To have a continuous focus on one point. In dhyana, you do not get disturbed. The mind is fixed. It doesn't break. So nice. To understand the real self. I've got written down there. And what does... There is a place where you focus which will be content, undisturbed. Meditation. That's the literal translation of that 7th limb in the Yoga Sutras. It's lovely, and it says once we do all those things, we move on to the 8th limb, which is samadhi, which is the equal, highest, supreme, to understand the real self. Oh, it just sounds so beautiful. Samadhi is the state where the meaning of the object stays, but the object itself is removed. Beyond samadhi, you become the light, enlightened. No difference between the object or yourself. You are all one. And they're the 8 limbs of yoga. Yoga off the mat. So in short, what I like to do and how I like to sort of conclude the 8 limbs of yoga. The first is it is a constant practice. It's not just the physical, it works off the mat too. Think about your interactions with others, how you behave. Is it helpful or unhelpful? How you think and how you talk to yourself. Is it unhelpful or unhelpful? And in the sutras, it's called klishas and aklishas. Is that thought helpful or unhelpful? Do your daily practice, whatever that may be, and think about your breath work. And once you do all those things, your mind will become a little bit less clouded, perhaps, and we can begin to draw inward to check in on how we feel. And then that will lead us into concentration. We'll be able to concentrate on one thing at a time, which will lead us to meditation, that lovely blissful state. And maybe sometimes we can get these wonderful glimpses of peace where we drop in and out of that awareness and essentially live a long and happy, healthy life. I'll put some links into YouTube videos and books and stuff like that if you want to look at that in more depth. But the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is where I would start with. Read it, it's beautiful, it's so helpful, not just in yoga land, but just in your life, or in my life, I should say. It's been fundamental for me. Okay, I think that's it. I've waffled on enough. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I made some sense. And thank you. I'll see you for day 8. where we start looking at the seated poses of the Ashtanga system. Thank you. Nice to see you. Take care.